Happy Friday again, parents. We just finished week 4 with your babies, so we want to update you on what we're doing the upcoming week. So in reading, we're going to begin our reading pathways, which is just 4 different kinds of elements that your children need to know for reading. So the first one is character traits. So I put a little sentence stem here. If your kids are reading with you, you can ask them what kind of character is, whatever the character's name is, and how do you know? The second one is how did the character change? So how did the character's feelings change in the book, and what was the turning point for the character? What event caused the character's feelings to change? The third one is synthesizing, which is putting the pieces of the story together and figuring out why each piece is so important. So why is this part important to the whole story? Or you could take little pieces of dialogue and say, why is this important to the whole story? The next one is theme, which is the lesson of the story. So you can just ask your kids, what is the lesson of the story and how did you know that? I also wanted to go over some words that are highly missed or students don't know what they mean. And these come from STAR. It's never too early to start for STAR. So the first one is conflict, which means problem. The second one is suggest, which means shows. The next one is conclude, which means infer. And the last one is selection, which means passage. These are words that are just highly missed just because we use the other word when we're talking. A couple other things you can work with your kids on is the cause and effect relationships when in your reading. Different prefixes and suffixes like re, un, dis. All these are prefixes and suffixes that are tested. Also root words, roots of words. So for example, I made a little word web to show you. So the root is vis, and I can think of vision, invisible, and visualize. So they all have to do with the same thing, and that's to see. So if a kid knows that this is a root and it means to see, usually they can figure out what the other words mean. So I encourage you to practice this. If you see any words that you're reading or just any words, when you're going out to a restaurant, different words on menus, try to look for the root of the word. The last thing I want to talk about is writing. So I didn't assign any entries this week. I probably will next week. So to get them started, you can play this game at home. So these are El Loteria cards. And what they are, just like, it's a bingo card game, and it has different pictures on it, and they're in Spanish. So what you can do is you can ask the kid to pick one card that they like the best, and, they'll pick this one, and then you'll ask them to write down why they picked it. So they might say, I went on a fishing trip. Well, there's a story right there. Or I ate fish for dinner last night. I can use that as a story. So just giving them visuals where they can begin writing stories of personal experiences is always good. And last but not least, this is our read aloud. So if you ever have a chance to go to Half Price Books and get this, it's an amazing story. And I read it every year at the very beginning of the year. And it's by Kate DiCamillo. It's called The Tiger Rising. It's a really good book for 4th graders. They really get it, but it goes deep enough where they do have to inference a lot of things as well. So I recommend this book. They can read along with us at home. And now I'm going to turn over to Ms. Nolan.
Hi, parents. Thanks for coming out. Those of you who came to open house last night, it was really good to see you. This week we are continuing our work on decimals, and we're working on comparing and ordering decimals in math. Today we worked with some decimal cards with some visuals that look like this. The kids learned today that this kind of a card, I'm going to hold it so you see it the right way, this kind of a card represents tenths. Well, this card in particular represents hundredths. And we talked about comparing and ordering, reading and writing these. So for instance, this card shows, and I don't know which way you're looking at it there, but this card in particular shows 30 hundredths. And we write it in a fraction, we write it in a decimal, and we can say it as well. This card in particular shows, 3/10, and we can write that as a fraction or as a decimal as well. When we're comparing and ordering in fourth grade, the students will have visuals to compare and order, so that they might have something that looks like this and something that looks like this. This is going to be funny on my video on my end. Sorry. And visually, they should be able to say that 3/10 is greater than 25/100. If they're looking at something like this, they should be able to say that 30/100 is equivalent to 3/10. It's funny doing this backwards. Sorry.
Yes. It's reflecting it backwards to us, so that's why we're a little bit confused when we're showing it.
We'll get better at that, or I will get better at that. Anyway, next week we're going to wrap that up with the comparing and ordering, but we're going to be starting adding and subtracting with decimals. I encourage you to, if you're working with your child at home, when they're doing their homework, to show their work on lined paper or grid paper. And generally speaking, I turn the lined paper on its side so that, and I wish I had an example, so that as you're working, you can keep the numbers in between the lines. And so the kids can add up the decimals, or they can add up decimal numbers by lining up decimal numbers. So even if the numbers aren't even themselves, as long as you've got them inside the lines, the decimals line up like this. And they can fill in with a 0 here, if you can see that. But we'll be working with addition and subtraction and include some problem solving with that next week. On Friday, the kids are scheduled to have a Math CCA, which is a campus common assessment. Everyone in the fourth grade will take the same test, and it will cover everything that we've done with decimals so far, and it will be a major grade. In science, we're wrapping up our unit on matter. Your children should have index cards that look like this with the word on the front, some sort of picture, and a definition on the back. This is just a couple of really, really super nice examples with pictures included. Some of the kids have them in their homework folder. Some of the kids have them still here, but I encourage them to take them home and study those words for writing and everything we do. Next week we'll continue working on magnetism, ability to sink or float. We're going to do some word wall activities, and we'll focus in on the kids will be accessing STEM scopes and doing some watching videos, answering some questions, and doing some writing. And they'll take a post-test either at the end of next week, depending on a review, or early the week after. And that's what we're doing in science.
All right, awesome. You guys have an awesome weekend. Thank you, parents.
Bye.